I am a native of Wolfe County. Was away from here for about 30 years, worked on corporate oil most of my life. I'm a superintendent of a small private school here.
And where did you wander away to?
I lived in, well, of course, I went to Eastern, and when I graduated Eastern, I lived in Lexington for, I don't know, maybe 12 years, and I lived in Pennsylvania for about 12, 15 years, somewhere in that vicinity, and then we moved back here.
Moved back again, huh? But you grew up here?
Grew up here.
Grew up here.
My parents are still here, and, you know, they're elderly, so that's how we came to be back here.
That's a good place to be from and to return to, I think.
Okay.
Looking that way to me, yeah, as I'm learning about the community. So we're going to talk about type 2, particularly type 2 diabetes. So when you hear the word diabetes, what's it make you think about?
Probably the first thing I think about is sticking yourself. That's what I think of, needles.
Needles?
Mm-hmm.
It's a pretty negative picture.
Mm-hmm.
Is that your experience, or?
No, the first person I ever remember who had diabetes actually did have to take injections daily. I was just a small child then, so I think that left an impression with me. So, you know, the first thing I think of is her grapefruit and her needles.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And do you have diabetes yourself, or?
Do not.
Okay, so what's your experience with other people with diabetes?
My father has type 2 diabetes. My 2 sisters and my brother all have type 2 diabetes.
So you have quite a few people in your family.
Mm-hmm.
Do you worry that you might get?
Oh, yes.
Are you doing anything to?
No. Must not be that worried.
Well, it's kind of funny how we are sometimes.
Yes, I know. It's like you wait to hear that before you actually start trying to address it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that, you know, that's exactly how most people are.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's not really
reactive, not proactive.
Yeah, yeah. And even when we know, we still...
Even when you know that you're high risk, but, you know, I don't think it's anything anybody really wants to have. But.
So what do you see happening with your family members, or what have you seen happen with your family members that have the disease?
Well, they're actually all doing, you know, fairly well with it. My father is, Dad will be 83, and he manages his just by diet and exercise. So he's doing very well with it. My brother and my sisters are doing okay, but probably not as well as he. They maybe aren't as disciplined as he.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, that's kind of the way it seems to be. So,
yeah.
For now, at least.
Are there things that you think that in the family that you do to help each other or support one another?
Well, I think so. I think, you know, we do try not to, well, we encourage, you know, that they check the sugar daily like they're supposed to. And we try not to bring in lots of sugary, you know, sweet things that they probably really shouldn't have. And we do try to you know, be active in some ways, to do things together where we can all do things and be active together. So that is probably the biggest amount of support.
Have you ever been called food police?
No. No one's going to call me the
No
food
one's
police. I don't think so.
Okay, that's good. So that must mean that whatever you're doing is feeling okay, you know. What do you think that a person needs to do to keep the disease under control?
Well, I think probably exercise and diet. I think, you know, losing weight and trying to keep your weight at a good level. I think those are some of the more important ways. Plus, you know, lowering your sugar intake and being careful, trying to eat more fruits and vegetables, I think would be helpful in, you know, lowering your sugar.
Now, you said your dad's in his 80s.
Yes.
And he is in good control. So what kind of things does he do to keep active?
My dad would put most people middle age to shame. He gardens. Even this summer, he's got a huge garden. I mean, enough to feed probably a family of 12, and it's just he and my mom. But he walks every day. He takes a long walk. Works in his garden. You know, he's getting to where he doesn't get out and get on his farms as much as he used to, but up until about the past probably 6 years, he was daily working on his farm. Even though he had people to do that, he was always there pitching in himself. So, you know, Dad is in incredibly good shape for someone of his age. I mean, he still gets out every day and stays active.
Sometimes people think that, you know, when you get up in the years, you can't do that, but it's nice to...
Yes, you can, but, you know, I think it's not something that you wait until you're 80 to start. You know, this is lifetime habits, and you probably need to develop them early on and, you know, be consistent with them. And he's been very good about that. He's worked hard his whole life, so,
Yeah.
you know, and that's helped him a lot, I think, because, you know, when he notices if his sugar starts being a little high, and it's that way for, you know, 1 or 2 times, then he starts cutting back on his food and doing more exercise, and, you know, so he does a very good job keeping it under control.
And now you said you work with a school, so you see some children. What age children?
We have children in preschool from 3 years old up until sophomores in high school.
Oh, yeah.
So we have a full range.
And there's a fairly big problem with overweight and obesity in children.
In children.
So are you seeing that at your school?
We have some children who, you know, are obese. Our campus is not, our campus, they have to walk daily to go to the dining hall and back. Our campus is kind of not lazy friendly, I should say, because it sits on a hill, so, you know, you have to walk up an incline to get there. There's steps. So they do get some exercise just coming and going, you know, for school activities, going to chapel. They have to walk, and then there's quite a few steps up to the church. So they have an opportunity more than just the 10 or 15-minute recess to be out and to be active. But we still do have some children that, you know, do have weight issues.
Do you have a physical activity class or?
We have PE. We're hoping this year to have archery, and we're looking at some other things to add to it to try to help, you know, the children as a whole. We have a small, you know, we have a small school. It's donor supported strictly. So, you know, a lot of those things we have to have a volunteer or someone, you know, to work with them, and we don't always have that. That's probably our biggest downside as far as being able to do more.
Right.
But,
and how do you handle the nutrition concerns?
well, we have in our dining hall, of course, we don't have a fryer. I mean, we don't fry any food. We have salads every day that children can have as much as they want. We always try to have some sort of fruit for our dessert. And of course, we do have some things that probably really aren't the best things, but kids will eat them. You know? So you have to have something they will eat. They have milk every day. You know, we have a fairly decent, nutritious meal each day for them. But there probably are time to time things that really, you know, they're kid food. So,
yeah. Do you purchase anything from local farmers for fresh fruits or vegetables?
Not a lot, but we this year have our own garden that we grew this summer, so we do have an opportunity that we can have fresh tomatoes and cucumbers. We had watermelons, cantaloupes, you know, some things like that that we can actually use. As far as a farmer's market here, we have one, but it's fairly small, and it's not, where you can regularly get the fresh fruits and vegetables all year long. So we end up buying a lot of them from, the supermarket and stuff.
Tell me a little bit more about how did you get the garden going?
Well, we have 500 acres, and originally we were an orphanage, so we have fields there that really had nothing in them. And we happen to have a gentleman that works for us that loves to garden. So we decided this year we would just plant some gardens in some of those fields, and we did. And we had corn and, we had squash. We planted quite a variety, and it's done very well. But mostly in the summer, we don't have a whole lot of children on campus. We have our preschool on campus mostly. Mm-hmm. So, we probably didn't get to use it as much as we would have liked to, but that's just part of the season and the school season. So.
Right, exactly. So did you do any teaching with the children around the garden?
Our preschool children had their own garden. So they would walk over there, and they planted, I know they planted melons of a couple different kinds. I believe they planted carrots, cucumbers, tomatoes, and several other little things. But they would go with the teacher, and they would walk across campus, which is a fairly decent height, especially for 3- and 4-year-old children. And they all wore their little sun hats and their sunblock, and they would go in the early morning and work in their garden for a while. So we're hoping that we will be able to harvest some of those melons at least, and they will be able to eat those and see what they grew in their garden.
Were the kids excited about that?
Oh yes, they loved their garden. And they really did enjoy it.
Yeah, so. But there seems like there's a lot of opportunity to teach about science and nature.
Yeah. It worked out really very well. I mean, it would be nice if we could have some of our older children participate next year and have a little garden. But what you run into is then they're gone during the summer.
Right.
And of course somebody else has to tend it anyway in the summer.
Exactly.
So.
Exactly.
But that's a possibility.
Yeah. Was this the first time you've done that, or?
The first time since I've been there that we've done it, yes.
Great. It sounds like a great opportunity to.
I think they learned. I mean, they learned a lot about planting, and they would, while they were walking, they would have little nature talks about different things they saw on their way to the garden and from the garden. So that was interesting.
Well, just getting children outside these days is a good thing.
Yeah.
Because they're inside.
So much they're in playing games and really don't have much social interaction with others.
Exactly. I wondered if you think that there's things in the community that create risks for diabetes.
Do you mean diet-wise?
Anything. It could be diet.
I think, and this is strictly my opinion, but I think our food stamp program, which was intended to be a good thing, but I think it has probably gone too far to a lot of already prepared things, frozen things. I think there's not really a lot of fruits and vegetables and things that you would cook healthy. I think there's a whole lot of prepackaged things that end up being purchased with that. Probably less milk and juices than should be. And, I think that's lent itself to poor nutrition. Is what I guess I'm trying to say.
Well, and there's a lot of, I don't know what the proportion of the people in the county that gets it, but I'd say there's a fair number of folks.
And, not everyone does that, but I think a lot do, that they get easy, prepackaged things instead of, I think the program they need to look at it a little closer and decide you know, what is it that can be purchased with it?
Yeah.
Can we get fresh food and nutritious foods and things like
Yeah.
that? And I think that would go a long ways
Yeah.
towards addressing some of the problems that we see.
Is there one of the problems is getting information out into the community about, you know, how to make changes, or you know, that this is a problem,
Right,
or
right.
do you have any suggestions on the best way to get information out to people?
Well, not really, because in all of Eastern Kentucky, you run into problems with transportation. You know, if you try to have a meeting, a lot of people that might be interested can't really make it to the meeting. A lot of them just really don't have any interest in hearing it. And so, you know, I think a lot of the logistics of the area, I mean, there's really no public transit so that people can easily get places. Even if you had readily available exercise options for people, a lot of them would not have a way to be able to get to it. So, you know, walking, just going out and walking on the sidewalks, we don't have sidewalks in lots of places, so, you know, people are then at risk sitting on the edges of the roads and things. So I don't really know. I think a lot of times people tune out advertisements. I mean, they just don't really pay attention to them.
Yeah,
So
it's definitely a challenge, you
it
know,
is.
to figure out how to get people to know, first know, and then to do something about it.
Well, unfortunately, sometimes it really takes someone in their family actually having it before then there's the interest to do something about it, which goes back to what we were talking about, the proactive and reactive. You know, even myself, knowing that I'm at risk, don't really consciously think about it every day. So, you know, you would think that you would, because it, you know, can cause so many other problems health-wise for you. And, you know, but still, that I think is just the human nature of people. I think that until it actually happens to someone close to them, they don't pay that much attention. So,
one last question: when, because you're working with children, do you have any success in working with the whole family? And if so, what's something to focus on as a good way to approach that?
well, it's a very, very interesting question. I don't know if I really have an answer for that, because, you know, we do work with whole families in regards to lots of things in our school, in regards to, you know, learning, hindrances to learning and different things of that nature. Really, at this point, we haven't even gotten that involved with, you know, in regards to something like diabetes and prevention. I am giving some thought to maybe trying to have some sort of day camp next summer that, you know, would at least be some sort of exercise that, you know, that children could come to. Sometimes children have to be the one to take the message home. And it's sad, but that's just the way it is.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, I think it's a big challenge is, you know, how do you involve whole families today? Because families seem to be fractured a little bit.
Yeah, probably, I guess the biggest thing we would do, like exercise-wise or something like that, we try to have a family night at least once a month at our school that families can come to. Sometimes we have skating, or sometimes we do other activities. But, you know, not all of them will come.
Right.
But sometimes some of them do. And then when children tell other children they had a great time, then, you know, that puts a little bit more pressure on the other children's parents. So sometimes you have to go in the other way and the children lead.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah.
And if they do have a good time, you know. The other thing that I always am trying to figure out is how do you get men involved? a little bit more. You know, so many things
Which,
we want to
you
do.
know, I mean, in defense of men, I think there's lots of men who are interested in their children and want to do and help. But I really think a lot of times they're sort of discouraged at school level because, you know, people always defer to the mother and they sort of leave the guys out sometimes. I mean, the things and activities and things that they have don't always interest, you know, the father to come so much. I mean, you know, if you're going to have a cooking day for your children, a lot of men maybe don't want to come to that, but they would if you were going to play, you know, one-on-one basketball or something like that.
Right.
So, I mean, sometimes you have to look at your audience and figure what are we offering that would interest, you know, the dads. Because I think most people are interested in their children on some level, and you know, but sometimes you have to make them feel that they're welcome to come and have that interest in their children. And I don't think always we're good at that as schools. You know, we get so tied up in the day-to-day routine and all the different things we have to do. I think sometimes we fail to think about the parents that, you know, would want to be involved and how to engage them in that. So
That's a challenge for the community.
it is a
at large.
challenge. Yes, it is.
Well, I think that's all the questions,
Okay.
Candy. Is there anything else that you
Nope.
want